Well, speaking of fans, last week we got some comments from some South Carolina fans about like how we're not talking about South Carolina, which is not true. We've been talking about South Carolina since our Christmas episode, really about like off and on every week, every other week, and how exceptional they've played. But we're gonna dive into this just a little bit more because like South Carolina has won 21 games. Like it's early February. South Carolina is making a case for themselves to be one of the best teams. Saturday, they have to come back. They play a little, asleep to start the game against Vanderbilt, but end up coming back in that game and end up beating Vanderbilt, 75-60. Now, I know one player who didn't have like the biggest game on the team, but was still just an absolute force. And we've been talking about him nonstop this season. BJ Mack. Maddie, your thoughts on BJ Mack before we jump into it here?
I mean, BJ Mack is just kind of a breed of his own, and he's kind of a guy that we slept on a little bit earlier in the season. Knew he was a great addition to this team, but he is getting it in down low, making sure that the rim's secured and he can take it out, shoot the three ball. So he's really a huge threat to teams that we didn't realize. And now I think a player that every team is going to have circled to make sure they have a good scouting report on because, like I said, if he is not killing you down low, he can take it up top and get it done too.
Yeah, now again, he was not the points leader for South Carolina, and he wasn't the rebound leader either. He was really the B leader in this game against Vanderbilt, but he had a sensational game. 18 points, 6 rebounds, 5 3-point field goals made in 24 minutes. Just a really, really solid game for Mac. And we just keep seeing him do this. Like he's just a dominant player for this team and one that you just have to be encouraged every time you see him play. He's exciting, he's fun. He's got to be like one of the top 5 big men in this league right now. And just kind of breaking it down, he's also the Maddie, you love this stat, the free throw made per game leader for South Carolina as well, too. Now, again, Colin Murray Borles had the big game for Vanderbilt, but BJ Mack, again, just a great player. And Maddie, there's just a lot of ceiling for this South Carolina team to go down. Just, let's start this conversation this way because we've talked about it a lot, but I really just want to hit home how surprising this South Carolina team is. If I told you at the beginning of the year that the odds for South Carolina to win the SEC, according to a couple of betting websites, was plus 25,000, how shocking is it knowing those numbers to where South Carolina is tied for first in the SEC right now?
Yeah, I mean, it's insane. I literally put down in my notes that no one, absolutely no one, thought we would see at any point South Carolina being tied for first place, probably even being tied for one of the top 5 spots.
I would have
And they're
said you're drunk.
on,
Yeah.
yeah, they're on a 7-game win streak inside SEC conference play, which is absolutely insane if we're looking at it in August or September.
Yeah, and this team's got good wins too, and they've got more Q1 wins than some other teams. We mentioned this last week, like Auburn, Kentucky. Like they're racking up Q quad one wins, and they got a Q1A to go along with it as well. They got a win over Tennessee in Knoxville. They got the win against Kentucky, as well. And then the game that everybody's kind of sleeping in, if you're not really into basketball, one team that you may not realize was a Q1 game for South Carolina was their game against Grand Canyon. That's 43 in the net. Grand Canyon's one of the best mid majors in the country. This is a really, really good team. Now, Friday, when they did their bracket updates, and I'm sure there'll be a new one coming out either Tuesday or Monday from CBS and ESPN. South Carolina was a 4 seed on CBS, so a top 16 seed, and then a 5 seed on ESPN, top 20. Where those projections go next, Maddie, any clue where South Carolina ends up when this thing is all said and done with the resume they're putting together?
Yeah, I mean, if they keep continuing as they do, um, I think they could even bump themselves up to possibly a 3 seed, maybe even a 2 if they win out the rest of the season. Just because these wins keep getting better and better, especially when you look at the players producing on their team. We mentioned BJ Mack, Michi Johnson's one of the best scorers and team leaders in the SEC right now. And then Talon Cooper, who we talked about last week, who's got a true shooting percentage of 65.3% and effective field goal of 63, one of the highest in college basketball right now.
Yeah, no,
So,
for
I mean, if you continue on this track of these players continuing to produce, especially with the games that they've got coming up, going to Auburn, if they get the win there, which we'll talk about later in the episode, but that's another major component to where they could end up.
My only big concern with South Carolina is their shooting ability. It's pretty mid-tier, honestly. Like they're shooting about 44% per game, but they're making that up with the three-pointers that they're hitting as well. They're just south of 9 3-point field goals hit per game. They're an exceptionally well put together team. They're doing what they need to do. But yeah, that's my only real concern with South Carolina is that it are the issues that they're the shooting issues. Everything else is kind of there, and they're overcoming these issues and figuring out ways to win in multiple ways. But we mentioned just a little while ago, there's a clear path for South Carolina to win the SEC regular season. Right now, they're tied with Bama at first at 9-2 in the SEC. They've got that win over Tennessee, as we mentioned. Tennessee's sitting at 7-3. Kentucky's sitting at 6-4 and tied for fifth right now. They've got wins over those teams. So they're facing Auburn this week, and Auburn's like their biggest threat minus Alabama. Like Alabama may have the tiebreaker over them because they got the win over them at home. But overall, it's a clear field. I mean, like there is a serious chance that South Carolina takes this thing, and the SEC standings are right there in their favor, and they got some games that they can win. If they can win a couple of key ones, they got a chance. They got a legitimate chance to win an SEC title.